So last thing, we're a little bit short on time, so we're going to go directly into 2016 platform migration strategies. Now, we have a good chunk of you guys hanging out here. We appreciate you hanging around for the special 90-minute webinar. We've got time left over. Hopefully you can stick around for the site reviews. But we have a poll here. Tara, let's run it.
We do. We were just kind of curious to see how many of you had plans to migrate your store in 2016. I know that's something that, unless you've recently done a migration, that we get a lot of questions from clients coming in to see, you know, what our thoughts are on different platforms. And it seems like, especially right now with all the changes that are happening, people are looking.
Right.
So we're kind of curious to see how our viewers are.
And these poll results we'll show in here in just a second does not surprise me at all. We'll show them why. Let's go ahead and reveal that. Close it and show the polls. So this is pretty much exactly what I was thinking it would be, that there's a lot of folks, that second one there, that they're thinking about it, they need some more information. You're seeing the 14% there, they're saying yes, definitely. I mean, this is kind of bearing out in the physical conversations that I have with merchants. 11% are saying not this year but soon, and 42% say no, we're happy where we are. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah,
what do you think, Jared?
Over half are either definitely going to or definitely considering platform migration, so that's a huge change.
Very good. Don, you still there with us?
I'm still here.
All right. So let's talk, Don, if we could, you and I and Scott can all kind of share on this as we rapid fire this. This is important information. But the first thing that we're seeing across the board, with a few exceptions, is that platforms are going up on prices. You know, so what's your take in general about what you're seeing about the pricing changes, Don?
Yeah, I know for me, I think the BigCommerce one mentioned there is been a huge one. Just rolled out literally like this month. It's been announced for about 2 months, and I think it's got a lot of merchants on BigCommerce, at least those that are significantly hit by it, you know, thinking about, is this where they need to be? Because the pricing change for some of them was literally 4 to 8 times their original pricing, with, like I said, at most a 2-month notice, and some knew less than that. So I think that's causing a lot of people to either move or at least seriously think about it, just because A, it's an expense, and some merchants, depending on what they sell, it doesn't make sense for them to be paying what they're going to be paying there, and if nothing else, also just, you know, feeling like they're at that platform's mercy, and what else might they do in the future. So you know, I don't know, it may be great for them in the long term. I don't want to say anything particularly bad about, you know, BigCommerce, because it's overall a fair platform. But just a big price change made a huge difference. So,
well, and obviously with anything that you move to, or any type of business expense, you have to see the value, right? You have to see, is this worth the money? And one thing that's preceding a lot of this is demand. You know, if the demand wasn't there, then the pricing model would probably stay the same or shrink or whatever. But you know, there is a lot of demand for different platforms right now. But I think it's worth noting that you as the merchant are holding the cards. Okay, a lot of times you think that the platforms themselves are holding all the cards. They want your business. They want you over there. And especially for the mid-market, Don, there's a lot of competition for that specific size store. Now, the mid-market is it's kind of a variable definition. A lot of people define mid-market very differently. I'm curious kind of how you would define it, Don, and maybe Scott, but you know, typically what I see is the $1 million+ mark. Is that pretty fair to say in terms of annual gross revenue, Don, in terms of the mid-market range?
That's probably, you know, good. I think also it's going to depend on the store, because it's sort of like in this BigCommerce price changing thing. You know, there are some stores that sell big dollar items that get hit differently than they do, you know, and so you've got a big dollar item they're not making a big commission off of, but they're now in a big pricing tier difference as compared to a merchant who has a smaller dollar item that has a bigger markup on it. So there's both the size of the store and then obviously the products they sell. That's going to depend on where they fall too.
Right. So. Okay. Well, go to this next important point, Don, if you would.
Yeah, I think to me the big thing is so many people look and they go to just say, I'm going to need to change platforms. Oh, this one looks like it's really good and it's got a lot of activity. Let's move there. But I think you have to really plan out your move. You have to, research the platforms. What are your choices? What can they do? What can they not do? I mean, a lot of people are, like Shopify, and Shopify is doing a lot of good things. But also there are some things that don't fit well with that. Just one simple catch is on product variations. Shopify only allows 100 product variations on a product. So if you have something that comes in 20 colors and 10 sizes, let's just as a simplified version, it doesn't work because that's already 200 variations. It doesn't fit. Or can I do, filtering and pagination the same way in a Shopify versus a BigCommerce versus a Yahoo versus a Magento, and they can work completely differently. And so it's important to understand what are the differences and how does that impact me and how am I going to organize when I get there. Shopify doesn't have subsections the way normal stores do. They do it with this tag system. It can work, but you have to rethink how you're doing things. So it's just important to know before you jump, like doing anything, plan where you're going to go and know what you're going to have there going in.
Don,
so
if I could interject.
Go in blind.
Absolutely. One of the things I'd like to interject, and one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give to merchants that are considering a move is, for a moment, don't think about the platform brands at all. Just simply think about what you need to run your store. Are there essential features that you have right now that are critical to the way you run your business? Are there features that you'd like to have that you don't yet have? Maybe it's not available for whatever reason on the platform that you have. Technical requirements document that you don't think about how it looks or branded or anything right now. Think specifically about what you need the store to do. This is exactly in line to what the advice Don has given here. And then do your best to match your needs with the platform. One of the things we did with a merchant here recently, Don, is they did exactly that. They put their technical requirements document, and they had no idea which platform was best for them. And so what we did is we did a 3-column tiered checklist saying, all right, this is available in this platform. This one, it's not available. With this one, it's available, but you're going to have to hard code it out the wazoo. And that's typically, Donnie, maybe you can speak to that. That's typically something that can hang up a lot of merchants because obviously nobody wants to build a store that's cumbersome for the merchant going in. But I think the merchant has to know going in, what am I going to have once the site is actually built? Are there going to be some things that are easy to maintain? Are there going to be some things that are harder to maintain? How would you speak to that, Don?
I couldn't agree more. I think it's important when you're making that list. A lot of store owners will look at it and they'll go, okay, I'll just think of, and they think of the big features they need. Oh, I need filtering and I need, some image pop-up and I need it to be responsive. But I think it's really key you think of everything in your site, whether it be variations or ability to handle multiple colors or have images for those colors or any of those features, write them down. And you've got to figure out which are the ones that are the critical, it must have, and which are the ones that would be really good to have, and which are the ones that okay, I could let that go. Because, yeah, you need to be able to check off and say, this platform's got it, this one does not, this one doesn't, this one does. Or, as in a lot of cases, there's usually something you can do, but it's how involved is it to do it. I tell people, there's very few things I can tell you that can't be done. The question is whether it's worth it to be done, whether it's too much work to be done or too convoluted to be done. And going into something like this, a platform migration is a big project. It's a big risk if you do it, don't plan it out. And so as much as they hate doing that upfront work, I couldn't stress more that it needs to be done.
Well, and I'd love it through the comments. If this has happened to you, let us know about it. But, I hear reports all the time of merchants being contacted by different platforms, just saying, hey, you need to jump off the platform you're on, come on over here. And, I know a lot of those sales guys over there, good people, they have a job to sell. But one of the things I want to say, not to disparage any salesperson or any platform, but they're all going to say that their platform is the best, that you can do anything on X platform. And my advice is see past that, right? Talk to developers that have actually worked on these platforms, and they'll tell you the limitations like Don is talking about, and not just limitations, the advantages of moving to the platform. So do your homework, do your due diligence. Don't buy into the marketing hype surrounding any one platform, and just make sure this is a good fit for you, because you don't want to go through the time and the expense of a platform migration and realize later on, oh my gosh, I've made a terrible decision, right? That's the worst. So let's keep going here. All right. So how do they differ? Don, speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at different things. I mean, I mentioned on Shopify, they've got tags versus subcategories, and that's one difference. But every platform's got that. And they've got things they do. When you've got a hosted platform, it's very different than a non-hosted, like a Magento or a WooCommerce, where you're hosting it. You've got to deal with maintenance and updates. And some people go, oh, well, it's got so much flexibility. It does, but there's usually a price with that flexibility. That you've got either updates to do, security patches to do. You've got to get a developer who knows what they're doing on it. And you may say that, oh, they've got a lot of plugins. Well, those are great, but they either come with an expense or a drag on the site as a rule. And so you just want to plan. And it's okay. Different merchants need different things. I'm not going to tell you that there's any perfect platform for anyone, because there frankly is not. But you need to just know in advance and plan for, what am I taking on when I do this? If I go in, I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I've got a WooCommerce site and I love it. That's great, but they're also very technical, and so they don't need help with some of the things that you need help with, or a Magento site. And they're both great platforms in what they can do well, but then you get a Shopify, BigCommerce, Yahoo, that are hosted for you, and you have to also managing the back end, managing the servers, and so that's an important factor to take in. So just plan on everything and get all the information you can, and ask people, Eric or Eric's team or my team or Scott's team. We've all dealt with these, so we have, our opinions, valid or not, we've got them. So, moving on.
Yeah, great information. And I'd like for Scott to, Scott, you still with us?
Oh yeah, I'm learning a lot.
Okay. Very good. Well, Scott, maybe you can speak to this part, because you and I are working together with a few merchants right now in migrations where the following bullet point is critical, that they have to migrate several things: the products themselves, the images and descriptions. Can you maybe speak to how critical that is, and maybe some tips on things to avoid or to keep in mind?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start at the end. So one of the things that Grow by Data does is kind of the data migration, and specializes a lot on complex products, so products with options and variants and whatnot. And there's a lot of times that we get a call from a merchant and their site's ready to publish, and then they realize, oh, I have to get all my product copy in there in order to launch. And so they end up having to pay a huge premium because they need to get it done in like a couple of weeks. So I think the key point here is that when you're starting the platform migration, that's a good time to have an analysis done on your current product data. It's a good time to think about the new features you're going to have on your new website, and kind of build out a project plan that runs parallel with site development to make sure that you're mapping all of your product details from old to new, so that you're filling in any product detail gaps by doing web research or getting more information from vendors, so you can enable filters and more advanced features. And as the slide here says, so that you can think about how the new site will be organized, and whether the taxonomy, the way that the products are classified, has to change as well. This is often an afterthought, but often it takes a lot of complex work and planning to make it go smoothly. One of the projects we just finished together, Eric, because we went through this planning phase, we were able to take probably one of the most complex data migrations I've seen, and because of the collaboration with our team and your team was fantastic with it, we took a project that should have taken a year, and we got it done, I want to say, in like 2 months, because it was planned out well. So that's the critical takeaway.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I would encourage merchants to do is don't just look at a platform migration as just a huge exercise. You need to see this as an opportunity to sometimes reboot different aspects about your brand, like we said here with reorganizing your sections or categories. If there's anything that's broken or just kind of unattended to. Now's the time to address that so that the migration can actually have a huge impact on the overall brand experience for your customers. Now this one is huge, okay? I really want to emphasize this. We save this for last, but redirects. Now Scott, I have seen redirects go poorly, not from your firm, but from other firms that have handled these. I've seen them go very poorly, and I've seen them go very, very well. You can either tank your business during a migration, or I've seen traffic actually go up, you know, by a huge margin with effective SEO handling. So could you please speak to that real quick? Still with us? We lose Scott.
Sorry, I had you on mute. So far and away, the best scenario is that when you do the migration, you preserve your URLs as much as possible. And that is possible on a lot of platforms. When you preserve the URL versus using a redirect, you make it as easy as possible for Google to map to the new site, and you kind of preserve as much of the link juice that you've earned in the past as possible. That said, repercussions or redirects are a great solution, and it's just a matter of mapping out all of the URLs on your current site, and then mapping out all the new URLs on the new site if the URLs will change, and just creating a list. It's actually very easy to do. The trick is to make sure it's done in a very detail-oriented way so you're not missing anything. But well-planned migrations that factor in SEO, again, from the beginning, can be extremely successful. It's only when there's shortcuts or people just don't think about the critical things, in my experience, that the big issues tend to happen.
Well said. And obviously, this is what I would call a primer on migrations. If you would like us to do a whole webinar dedicated to this, we certainly can. But we wanted to pack in a lot of content for you today, and we're actually through with the 6 main points. We have some questions here, and we've gone 90 minutes to cover this. We are committed to stick around. We're going to cover 5 or 6 site reviews and get through that. If you need to go, you can. We'll be recording this session. But if you can stick around, we'd love for you to do that. But let's go to some questions right now. Tara, we had some from the audience. What are we looking at?
Yeah, we have time to answer a couple. Dawn, the first question's for you. It's back from the data section that you were speaking about. Is there a common formula for calculating customer lifetime value? The person asking the question kind of just getting started on that. So if you could point them in kind of the right direction as to where to start with that.
Well, I think, I mean, it's a fairly simple common formula, I guess. It varies, you can vary it some, but, obviously you're going to need to look at, if you've got reports that'll give you, your repeat customers, and you can basically take your number of sales over time. I mean, the simple formula would be take your sales over time and how many individual customers that was, and that would by nature give it to you. Realistically, you're going to want to take into account, as long a period of time, but you have to deal with the fact that if you got a new customer today and you do my analysis tomorrow, that first guy isn't really taken into account because you only know the one. So it really takes dumping out, your sales, your customers, basically getting an idea of who's your repeat customers, how many repeats they have, what your average order value is, things like this, and sort of massaging the numbers to a large extent. But you can do a basic calculation to get an idea. And honestly, if you watch your orders, depending on your size of your store, you may have an idea as to, hey, do people normally come back or not? Because some stores, honestly, they're one-time purchases. And other stores, they come back time and time again. So it can be a big factor long-term for you.
Very good. And we have another question here, Tara.
Yeah, we actually had one come in from Michelle. Probably Scott would be the best to answer this. Which is most advantageous when migrating? To redirect to SEO-friendly URLs, or to keep your non-SEO-friendly URLs from your old site?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So a premise of the question is that there is such a thing as URL structures that are inherently more SEO-friendly. And this has been much debated over the years, and I think Google's changed their algorithm quite a bit in regard to this. It used to be you would just stuff keywords in, and then the debate was, do you use underscores or dashes? I think that the guiding principle ultimately should be which presentation that will show up in Google is going to be the most likely to get a shopper to click. That's, to me, the guiding principle. If 80% of your product pages get no traffic from Google, then and they're not ranking really well, then I would be much more comfortable doing a change on those pages, making them more, I would say, user-friendly, not necessarily SEO-friendly. If you find that 20% of your pages are getting the most traffic and from Google organically, if it were me, I like to minimize as much risk as possible when doing something as big as a store migration and store redesign. So what I probably would do is keep them the same during the platform migration. That way it's one less variable that could cause an issue. It's one less variable we have to investigate if something goes wrong. And then after the platform migration is done, then consider changing the URLs. That's how I like to do it.